Connected Capital, a video series in which we look to shine a spotlight on an area of sustainability. In each episode, I'm joined by an expert from the fields of science, academia, policy, philanthropy, industry, or finance, in order to understand the connections within and between the human capital and natural capital worlds, and how better deployment of financial capital can help preserve, protect, and nurture the planet for those to come. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nina Hoas. You are Head of Strategic Philanthropy here at LGT. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you.
So, Nina, the vision behind this video series is to draw out the importance of connecting often very, very different spheres and worlds in order to better align ourselves to long-term and sustainable change. You're Head of Strategic Philanthropy. You help clients create bespoke strategies for their philanthropic activities in order for them to get the most out of the long-term goals of their wealth. Can you start by talking about what strategic philanthropy is?
Sure. And thank you so much for being here. Strategic philanthropy, we often actually differentiate charitable giving and philanthropy. Philanthropy for us being much more strategic, being long-term, being goal-oriented, if you wish. Whereas we see charitable giving perhaps as giving to certain causes, but just giving and not necessarily following through. Whereas philanthropy for us would be you set a goal, you want to measure the success you're having towards that goal, and you build a strategy around it, basically. An analogy that we very often use in my team is that of a fish and a hungry man, right? So you have a hungry man and you give him fish. And for us, that would be an example of charitable giving. This could be or mean perhaps dependency of philanthropic capital. Whereas if you do teach that hungry man how to fish and perhaps even go beyond so that he no longer will be hungry, maybe can provide for his family, bring even his family and maybe uplift the community from poverty, then that for us would be more strategic philanthropy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So when you're talking about goals, can you give me some examples of what goals clients might have with regards to their strategic philanthropy?
So strategic philanthropy, when we speak about strategic philanthropy, we usually go into systemic change when it comes to philanthropy. So really, you pinpoint an issue and you want to sort of disrupt the whole system in which this issue is embedded. So to give an example, I'll give an example of an initiative that our foundation, the LGT Venture Philanthropy Foundation, has actually supported with philanthropic capital. So here, the vision or the goal that was set out was actually to transform the national health system in a country. So in a country, you had this country actually happened to be Liberia. So out in the very rural areas, you would not necessarily have access to healthcare. And how this organization and through philanthropic capital, how they realized how to bring access or bring healthcare much closer to the population that were out in the rural areas. They realized that by training community health workers, this would actually bring the healthcare or the access much closer to them, rather than them having to then try to transport for many long distances and for many hours even to get to a health facility. And this is usually probably when a health complication has already gone too far, right? But if you can bring this much closer to a population, then you will obviously have a much bigger impact. And what they did, not only having this as a goal, bringing this closer to the population, then by making it sustainable, they also put them on the payroll of the government, and hence the government took over. So they were trusting and trying this out. They were training the healthcare community healthcare workers to basically detect and have the solutions in their pocket, if you wish, and then by having them on the payroll and then making them more official out in the rural areas, they became the respected healthcare professionals that people would actually go to, and hence the complications wouldn't go that far. So I think it's a great example of systems change philanthropy, if you wish, where you test one thing and then the government is actually taking it over and changing the whole way that the national health system in the country is done.
So if that goal from a client perspective could be increasing the standard of health in, let's say, that part of the world, how do you get involved in client conversations? Do you start with talking about their goals? Do you start by talking about how they want to use their investment portfolio with their philanthropic portfolio? How does the conversation generally start?
Yeah, so normally for a client to actually find us, because maybe worth mentioning is that philanthropy advisor as a profession is not necessarily known, right? As opposed to if you have a health issue, you go to a doctor. If you have a legal issue, you go to a lawyer, right? But in philanthropy, or if you're starting to give, you don't necessarily know that there are philanthropy advisors out there. But if you do know that they exist, and if you do come to us, so I have a wonderful team that I work with. So if they find us and know that philanthropy advisors are out there, they usually already have something in their mind that they want to discuss with us, right? And this could typically be anything from they want to get started. So let's say they have a liquidity event, and then they know that they want to give certain portion of that liquidity and start engaging in philanthropy, but they don't necessarily know maybe how to start, what sort of vision for their philanthropy, what sort of goals they want to set out. And also, how much should they give? What sort of structure should they give through, and so on. And so they would typically come to us either when they're getting started, just because they want to sort out all these questions, and especially that, how do you get started? Like, how do you find that one thing? Because what we note is that if somebody feels very invested into their goal or into their cause, they become much more, let's say, effective as philanthropists. So if they're passionate about something, then they are effective philanthropists eventually, or they can be, right? But in order to find that, they will usually need to have some sort of affinity to the cause that they are going to give to. Whereas there are so many different issues out there, it might be very difficult to find or pick one thing, right? But then working with us, trying to figure out, and we usually do that in workshops. It could be individuals, but very often it is together with families, and trying to find a good common vision that the family can stand behind. It's very often rooted in the values of the families and so on. So that could be one thing in how they start the conversations with us. But it could also be that individuals are already quite seasoned philanthropists, and where they know more or less that they want to be more strategic, or they want to have more impact. Maybe they really want to know if they're having any success, if they're having any impact at all. And that way they could come to us as well. It could also be that they just want to have others to collaborate with. They know that they will be able to maximize their impact if they do that together with others, so in partnership with other philanthropists. And here, very often, they would come to us because they want to find other philanthropists out there that are also working on the same issues that they are. And what we note is actually all my team continuously say that. Philanthropists, they seem to be quite lonely sometimes out there. Yeah. They may not even know who other philanthropists are in their own country that are working on the same issues. And here, given that we have worked with or are connected with a lot of philanthropists and have that network of philanthropists, I see them finding a good value in coming to us only to have that connection with another philanthropist because they want to work together with others. But yeah, so I mean, a long answer to your question. Sorry about that. But yes, conversations will probably be around something that they have already in their mind, because if they have taken the step and they've come to a philanthropy advisory, it's not because they're just giving to organizations that they already know or they sit on the board of, which they can continue doing, right? But if they want to have, if they have certain issues or they're struggling with something in their giving, getting started or finding other philanthropists to work with, or recently we worked with a family who it's the next generation population of a family who inherited a foundation, and that next generation wants to remodernize that foundation because they don't feel the same with the causes maybe that the previous generations had set out for that foundation. And again, they want to feel affinity, they want to feel passionate about the causes, and they want to have a strategy, they want to see that they're having an impact, and hence we're putting together the strategy together with the next generation to be over a long time. So very often they are engaged in one way or another, and I would say it's not that they're all getting started. It may very well be that they're seasoned philanthropists already.
Yeah.
But they will find us because they want to have something that they want to discuss with us. Sometimes just bouncing board for their issues around their philanthropy.
Yeah. So do you also inspire and encourage the philanthropists themselves?
Yes, and I think that's very important part of our work, actually, to inspire and encourage more and better philanthropy. And there are different ways that we do that, I would say. Just by bringing philanthropists in a room can very often actually inspire and spark inspiration and get those conversations going, not only partnership, but also encourage more and better philanthropy. We do a lot of sessions around strategic philanthropy, for instance, and where we bring philanthropists from different parts of the world. Last year, we brought a whole group with individuals that are very much engaged in or want to engage in the climate space. And here we took them out to one of the key initiatives of the Princely family. So the LGT Venture Philanthropy has been involved in an initiative in Kenya for a very long time. So we brought philanthropists out there. So yes, it's very much on our agenda, and I would say not only inspire and encourage by doing these platforms and providing these platforms, but also through certain thought leadership that we're trying to do it by making it easy. We wrote a guide on strategic philanthropy. We've done. We're right now making another study on good practices when it comes to other things. So we do it through thought leadership as well.
I'm really interested to hear this idea that philanthropists are often working in silo and maybe don't know that each other exists, even in the same country, and the amplified impact that you're having by building those networks. Can I ask you what you see as the difference culturally, but in different parts of the world, between philanthropic approaches?
Yeah, so I think there are certainly differences, right? So philanthropy in the US will be very different from philanthropy in Brazil, I would say. And I guess these differences are influenced by not only like history and culture, socioeconomic situations in countries, but definitely also the philanthropic infrastructure in different countries and regions, or religion. Recently we did a study actually on philanthropy or giving, I would say, in the Middle East. So there very much you see how traditions and religion and culture have set the tone for giving in the region, where giving absolutely exists. Everyone gives in this region, but it's very culturally inclined to not knowing what the right hand is doing. So they give, but they give under rate. Like they will be very discreet in what they do. Whereas now we start seeing actually with the next generation. So there's a difference also between generations and today's society, who will still probably have the same values as passed on through the families, but they see this opportunity of being more strategic, because in some cases it's actually quite a lot of money that we're talking about. Usually they have a percentage of the wealth that they are giving, and now if that amounts to a lot of money, they want to be more strategic now. They want to be able to partner up with other philanthropists and so on. So we do see a lot of differences, and again on this, also on the infrastructure, the philanthropic infrastructure. Whereas you here in the UK, you have a very good infrastructure for philanthropy. You won't necessarily see that in other countries. And in fact, we're working with 2 philanthropists right now who are trying to promote and drive the infrastructure around philanthropy, around giving, around. And also to be able to promote more of it, philanthropic capital in their countries and their regions, actually.
Yeah, I think from my perspective here in the UK, I know you work in the UK a lot, but there is a massive redefinition going on around wealth and these non-financial values that more and more individuals want to attribute to their wealth, but also the understanding that we use a lot of resources, human resource, ecological resources. Without those resources, we wouldn't be able to invest in the companies in a listed portfolio or in a private client portfolio. So supporting the human capital and supporting the ecological capital through philanthropic giving, as well as other ways, but through philanthropic giving is absolutely crucial if we're going to keep taking and consuming those resources to make normal financial returns.
Yeah.
You mentioned the UN, and that's very much segued onto my next set of questions. So I want to talk about your personal experience. You have a very, very rich tapestry of experience working in parts of Europe, in parts of Africa, specifically with the UN World Food Programme for 7 years and with the High Commissioner for Refugees. I wanted to get your sort of personal take on how those experiences have informed the work you do now.
I guess every opportunity and every experience throughout your life sort of shapes the commitment and your path, right? So growing up, I spent a lot of time in Africa because of family reasons, for instance, and that totally led me to start working for the UN, and my work at the UN totally led me into strategic philanthropy. But yeah, my work at the UN, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where I spent most of my time in sub-Saharan Africa, I think that gave me an opportunity perhaps to witness firsthand the sort of challenges and complexities that communities in these regions are faced with, and maybe a little bit deeper understanding of the social issues that, well, I guess in a way all the wider world are also tackling with, but especially those social and economic and environmental issues that we need to address. Working with communities, I guess that's the biggest, that's probably the biggest importance, that interaction with communities, but also with different cultures, the stakeholders of organizations working in partnership and collaboration on the ground in the communities. I think for me, the most important that we see also when seeing how change can happen, so organizations working on the ground together with communities, the impact that we can have on lives, I guess that gave me a lot of commitment and also a sense of purpose of what I wanted to do. But what I brought with me into the work that we're doing now is probably that importance of working together with the community and the community engagements and the community knowledge, the local partners, being sensitive to everything which is being done within the community, the knowledge, the ownership that needs to happen there. In order for anything to be sustainable, we have to work together with the local knowledge and just being sensitive to what's there and the needs that they feel that they have. So I guess foremost, the community engagement and the sensitivity and appreciation for the importance of having change together. I guess that was the most important impact from my experience in Africa.
It's probably a very helpful one, because I think some of the criticisms behind philanthropic giving is that lack of sensitivity, that lack of sort of authenticity or listening to what those individual communities need versus the perception of what they need from the outside world, as it were. So I imagine it stands you in extremely good stead for appropriate giving and partnerships.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, our whole team has actually had that sort of experience. I guess you sort of have to witness it firsthand also to understand a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We see some great examples of companies that are sitting in private equity impact funds and them eventually getting to scale and then potentially going through an IPO and being on the private market. So companies kind of transferring out of the private market pot into the listed market pot. Do you see examples where philanthropic capital is deployed and then through that businesses are created which then make their way into the venture capital or private equity space?
Yeah, certainly. I think that, I mean, if you bring it back to the role of philanthropy and philanthropic capital, which I see very much as being the capital that has the freedom, if you wish, to be the risk taker and prove new innovations, prove new approaches, prove basically prove how an innovation in the social space can have an impact. And if you see the philanthropic capital being that of patient long term and really taking the risk of proving concepts, and if it really works, then that is to be scaled up. And two ways to scale that is, one, the government takes it over, or this is something that businesses can take over, or becomes, you can start putting equity in, or I think we see this quite a lot in examples of in the climate space, for instance. We see that a lot in tech, that is tech for good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned that patient capital. I was going to use that phrase a little bit earlier in my question. Do you see that patience is there? Do you think there's more patience in the philanthropic world than there is in the more traditional investment world when we're thinking about returns, those non-financial returns to start off with?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would almost argue that, yes, I know there is, but obviously I have no proof for that. But yes. And I think that we often see actually philanthropic capital as being the catalyst as well for other things. So, but it takes a philanthropist or a family or an individual that has understood that.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily always in the beginning journey of your philanthropic, is like your philanthropic journey, or in the beginning stage of your philanthropic journey. But I think once a philanthropist have found their role, and once they are, they understand how to change systems, they understand what it takes to really have transformative, positive change, then they also see that is the role truly that a philanthropist and the philanthropic capital can have, being the catalyst for more money, or being the risk taker, being the ones that can fail, because governments and private capital won't necessarily. So this is really their role. But then to work in tandem, obviously, with public and private capital.
Such an inspirational way of phrasing the whole space. Do you find that within families, that phrasing helps bring younger generations on board, or engages them with a family's wealth?
I do think so. And we are going to prove that, actually, my team and I.
I didn't even set you up for that.
No, I don't know if we're going to prove it, but we're going to try to. We're actually engaging now in a study very soon where the 5 elements of wealth that I mentioned, where that is, we're trying to see whether our hypothesis that this is actually taking place, and that we're trying to also bring good examples and practices out there where this could potentially be proven in a study, which is going to be done by the next generation, and it's going to be a study and not a guide, but it's going to be an inspiration for next generation out there.
Yeah. A lot of the work that you do is for ultra high net worth or foundations, people that have a lot of wealth to be strategic with. Do you have an offering that's accessible to clients without that ultra high net worth status?
Yeah, we normally work with ultra high net worth individuals and individuals that give larger amounts of money, only because that's usually when they have a need, or feel that they have a need for philanthropic advice. But within LGT, I would say we have a wonderful offering when it comes to co-funding alongside, for instance, LGT venture philanthropy initiatives. And this could be, I think, where the co-funding comes in. I mean, obviously, our clients will also feel that being an exciting opportunity to co-fund alongside things that have been proven and really works, and where you have a huge team of, well, maybe not a huge team, but a good team of experts sitting on the due diligence and on the monitoring and the whole evaluation processes for the initiatives that LGT Venture Philanthropy is doing. And I think that would be an obvious, great offering, positive offering for anyone who wants to try and test out and really want to have vetted we usually don't call them projects, but vetted initiatives to co-invest alongside.
Okay, Nina, final question. We ask everyone that comes on this video series to recommend someone that they would like to take this conversation forward with, that idea of connecting individuals across industries, across spheres. So who could you recommend for us to speak to next?
Well, now that you've had me, I would probably recommend you to speak to Oliver Karius to also showcase all the examples and great initiatives that they're implementing on the ground in Africa and India, and give real case examples of wonderful initiatives that have great impact through LGT.
So he's the CEO of Venture Philanthropy.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you.